The week ended April 10, 2026, delivered a set of macro signals that, taken together, mark a meaningful repositioning in Nigeria's capital market standing, fiscal posture, and global investment profile, even as structural pressures continue to require careful navigation. Nigeria's reclassification to frontier market status by FTSE Russell, effective September 2026, is the most consequential development of the period. It restores a credibility benchmark forfeited in 2023 and signals to global portfolio allocators that the foreign exchange repatriation environment has measurably improved. The central bank's decision to grant international oil companies full access to export proceeds reinforces this directional shift. On the fiscal side, the presidential approval of a 3.3 trillion naira power sector debt settlement reflects an effort to restore liquidity to a chronically underinvested infrastructure corridor. The phased market-based structure is prudent, but competing interpretations of the settlement methodology among industry stakeholders introduce execution risk that warrant close monitoring. The World Bank's Nigeria Development Update places in a broader frame, acknowledging macroeconomic progress at 4.0% growth, while noting that poverty remains entrenched at 63%. In across markets, the NGX All-Share Index advanced 1.0% on momentum in the banking and oil sectors. Fixed income yields compressed at the long end, and Naira held modest ground at both official and parallel windows last week. Meanwhile, the week ahead opens with the IMF spring meetings, Nigeria's March CPI release, and China's first quarter GDP figures. These data point will test the durability of recent stabilization gains and sharpen rate expectations. Good morning and welcome to Business Today. My name is Osrc. Today on the program, we examine the Nigerian fisheries sector, a critical pillar of the Nigerian economy, contributing 3 to 5% to GDP and providing over 40% of the nation's animal protein intake. As Sub-Saharan Africa's leading aquaculture producer, Nigeria generates 1.07 to 1.2 million metric tons annually. However, its domestic demand at 3.36 million metric tons, a 2.5 billion metric ton deficit persists, positioning us as a major net importer. The sector comprises artisanal fishing, which accounts for over 70% of output from inland rivers, coastal areas, lakes and marine capture, and aquaculture, expanding at 4.8% yearly through private investment in catfish, tilapia, seeds, and feed. Join us as we explore the opportunities in this essential sector and the challenges inherent. My guest today is Dr. Osrc of the Federal University of Technology, Akure. She is a lecturer and a researcher. But at this point, we take a break on the program. We'll be back. Don't go away. Thank you for rejoining us. The program is Business Today. We take a few highlights before we move on to the interview segment of the program. The Nigerian banking sector's credit to the private sector edged higher to 75.62 trillion naira in February 2026 as improved capital buffers from the recently concluded recapitalization exercise bolstered lending to the domestic economy. Latest data released by the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) showed that total credit to the domestic economy increased to 111.39 trillion naira in February, representing a 1.8% rise from 109.42 trillion naira recorded when total lending stood at 150.57 trillion naira, underscoring a gradual recovery in credit expansion following months of tight financial conditions. A breakdown of the data indicated that credit to the private sector maintained its dominance, rising marginally from 75.2% to the government recorded a stronger uptick, increasing from 34.18 trillion naira in January to 35.77 trillion in February. This represents the highest level since November 2024, when government borrowing stood at 39.61 trillion naira. And the Central Bank of Nigeria sold the Nigerian Treasury bills (NTB) as investors hedge against double-digit inflation. This represents a 12.2% decline from the 5.54 trillion naira raised in the first quarter of 2025. Primary market data showed massive interest by investors with subscription reaching 14.84 trillion naira. The data showed that the CBN, which planned to raise 4.73 trillion naira in the period under review, eventually settled for 4.86 trillion. Amid massive subscription, the spot rates in 91-day NTB increased to 15.95% as of March 25, 2026 auction, from 15.80% in the first MTB auction in January 2026. The stock rate on 182-day moved from 18.6% January 2026 to 16.42% as of March 25, 2026. Alright, moving on the program this morning, I am being joined by Dr. Osrc of the Federal University. We'll be taking a look at sustainable fisheries sector in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Osrc, for joining us on this today. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Now, let's have an overview of the fisheries sector in Nigeria. How has it performed over the past decade?
Okay. Nice to be here and nice to be on the show.
You're welcome once again.
Okay, when we're talking about the fisheries sector in Nigeria, years back we were not where we are now. Fisheries sector has advanced quickly with aquacultural developments, because before the fisheries sector in Nigeria, malnutrition. So Nigeria, being a developing country, needs fish so much to be able to take care of its populace. But we know that the population is growing rapidly daily. If the population is growing rapidly daily, then fisheries and aquaculture must also improve to be able to meet the demand. We still have a lot to do. Worthy of note is the Ministry of Blue Economy that was just being established. And this is just to tell you the efforts that the government of Nigeria is putting in this field. Recently, an essay to the governor on marine and blue economy was also appointed to improve the blue economy and the need to improve sustainable fisheries and fisheries conservation in Nigeria. So I would say Nigeria over years has really improved, but there's still so much to do.
Okay, so I want you to talk about capture and culture.
Okay, yes, okay. For capture fisheries means taking place your heavy boats going into the ocean to collect fishes. But when we talk of culture fisheries, it means you have found a way as an individual to be able to produce these fishes in your own confinement. So I know you have heard of fish ponds, empty fish pond, fish culture, semi-intensive and intensive. That is what we call culture. But when you see heavy fishing gears, trawlers, or even artisanal fishes, people with their boats and canoes going into the open waters to collect fishes, that is capture. Capture means you're taking them without you having any influence of how it got there, but you're going to collect. But culture means you have to go that carry out the process of producing the fishes, and that's what's called breeding.
Now, despite aquaculture's promise in Nigeria, just like you said, that it's been good over the decades, so we still have a lot of challenges. We still have deficit in yes. Why does Nigeria still then import heavily
to lots of fishing gears from neighboring countries and from other countries invading the waters and cutting away, and this contributes to economic loss. Invading the waters and cutting away, and this contributes to economic loss. We have lack of capital. This is capital intensive. Going into culture requires capital, and if there is no enough capital for artisanal fishermen to be able to carry out this practice, most countries, developed world, have been able to tackle the deficit in fish production is through aquaculture. Aquaculture in highly intensive ways that will yield high production we are talking of complete intensive aquaculture, like your research aquaculture system. And such a system depends a lot on energy, and you know that aspect is a challenge in a country like ours. So irrespective of the fact that we are doing so much now, there are some bottlenecks, both economically, both infrastructurally, that has affected us in doing better than what we are doing now.
Okay, now as a researcher and a player in the sector, especially in Nigeria, now shifting towards modernized technology driven production, how well have we done in that area?
Well, we've done very well, because I always look at the bright side. I wouldn't say we are there yet, but we've done very well. There's an improvement. The first thing is even the sensitization of the people, the need of investing heavily in a circulatory aquaculture system, or even in an aquaponic system, or even in aquaculture. The idea was not there, the knowledge was not there, the information was not there. But now there is a sensitization. The general populace are sensitized. We have people going into fishing business. We could go and empty your waters, just go and catch all the fishes. But if you catch your small fishes today, then you're killing your fishes for tomorrow. So now the people are more knowledgeable on how to carry out sustainable fishing practices, which is what we're still doing continually, educating the populace. Then now the federal government has released different types of funding, some through the Bank of Agri, to all small scale fishers to start up aquaculture on a small scale. For those that are just starting, it's not advisable to start on a very large scale. So the government is doing a little bit as regards that, and we have some few success stories here and there. Then we have new businesses and companies that are actually carrying out fish culture. Then as regards research, there are so many innovations now from the aspect of research on how to improve the culture system, on how to reduce the amount spent on feeding. There's some research on how to improve the time frame of the fishes getting to mature sizes. So much research have been ongoing. So it's a joint effort between researchers, between policy makers, between stakeholders, between the financial institutions. So everybody is coming together to just promote the blue economy.
Alright, now to tell us, apart from funding from the government, we've talked about the threats to coastal and inland fishing.
Yes.
So what resilient aquaculture models can be integrated into national adaptation strategies?
The first thing is enforcing global rules. It's not as if we don't have to rules. We have rules that are guiding against game restrictions. We have rules on taxation, on licensing, and we have rules protecting our EEZ, that's our exclusive economic zone. But one challenge we have is enforcing those rules. So one thing we need to do is, for example, we're preparing for a policy dialogue meeting with stakeholders on coastal fisheries. I want to tell you that major stakeholders as regards the blue economy in Ondo State will be in attendance. And the essence of this is trying to chart the way forward. It's not as if we don't know what to do. We know what to do, but there are so many bureaucratic bottlenecks in achieving this. When there's a will, there is always a way. So the idea now is to enforce these rules and regulations. For example, we have reports from some coastal communities, and they see these fleets coming. They see these unregulated fishing activities, and they are threatened at times. But what we do from our own part is to make sure that the report gets to the right authorities. There's a network that we're planning on setting up on a project that I'm working on. It's called Fisheries Without Borders, where we have all stakeholders coming together. So such network is meant to promote this activity, and also try to put a stop to those that are going against the rules and regulation, guiding the sustainable use of our ocean.
Now, this policy dialogue on protecting our fisheries in the Gulf of Guinea especially, so why the focus on the Gulf of Guinea and not specifically Nigeria?
Okay, it's actually building climate resilience. in the Gulf of Guinea. That is because it's a project funded by Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors through the Blue Convergence Fund. And the project is carried out simultaneously in different countries in Africa. But in those states, whether it's in which and it's in lead. So it's a Africa project, which we believe will scale up to other parts of Africa. But for now, we are working in Ghana, Republic of Benin, and Nigeria. So that is why it is in Gulf of Guinea.
So how is that going to work?
The idea behind the project is to build resilience. You know, under climate change, we have different different focus. We have adaptability, we have resilience building. So climate change happens, and at times you cannot stop it from happening. The sector is the aquatic ecosystem is one of the most hit sector with climate change, and we can see that one way in which you can help any nation to survive, to adapt, is to build their resilience. And then another main point that we're working on is also to help dependent livelihoods, to help them adjust to the shock that comes with climate change. So the idea of this project is to build the resilience of the aquatic ecosystem, dependent livelihoods, and their communities to the challenges, to the unexpected shocks and waves that comes up with climate change. And here we'll be having a lot of focus on women and youth, because we all know that there's a gender that is more hit with climate change more than the others.
So why do you focus on women and youth?
That's what I just said.
Why the focus?
Yeah, the focus is on women and youth because climate change hits them more. They are the center of the challenges. This project wants to bring them to the table of discussion together. That's what we call the bottom of approach.
Talking about this program, how will Nigeria leverage this benefit from it?
Yes, it's a huge project for Nigeria, and it's a privilege that at Federal University of Technology we are hosting such a project. It's not carried out only in Nigeria, it's carried out in so many countries, in the US, Canada, and in the Philippines, and also in Asia. Nigeria is expected to leverage this because there is opportunity for Nigeria to chart the course of building resilience. There is opportunity and funding for Nigeria to carry out capacity building on sustainable fishing practices and how to build climate resilience. But another part of the project is actually having policy dialogue of stakeholders on how to influence policy. You know, rules and regulations need to be updated in a rolling manner, ongoing. The rules are not supposed to be static. They are supposed to meet the need per time. So there's another opportunity for us to revisit the challenges and for us to revisit our marine structure, our marine rules, our marine regulations, to see where there is a need for adjustment. There is also an opportunity for Nigeria to be able to enforce the adherence, to be able to enforce the adherence to these rules, yes, and regulations. So let's do what we call code management. Because now in the marine sector, you know, I will tell you one specific thing about the ocean. The ocean is a large expanse, and there is no way I can put it barrier as trees. And there are so many industries. If you talk of blue economy, we are talking of tourism, we are talking of transportation, we are talking of fisheries, we are talking of the navy, we are talking of the force, we are talking of the military. So we all have different interests of the ocean. So there is a need for different countries to come together, different stakeholders to come together to chart the course of sustainable use of this ocean, which is something that is also missing in the marine sector, especially in Nigeria and especially in Africa. So those are the things that the project is meant to do.
Alright, before we leave on the program, what's the role of research and technology in ensuring sustainable fishery sector in Nigeria?
Every policy that is being meted out has to be measured for research. Research helps to give stakeholders results we carry out research on the aquatic ecosystem to note the problems and the challenges. And that is when we can propose to policy.
Everyone, my name is Alex Adejoye, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to this special exclusive interview. As we know, the 2027 general election is fast approaching, and as a matter of fact, it's taking shape. Politicians, aspirants are coming out in different styles with different political ambitions.